I can't wait to surprise him. I'm finally home, Omar. You're here. What are you doing here? And you, what are you doing with her?
Don't make a scene, Amina. You're too late.
Amina didn't cry, but there are pains that don't need tears to change a life forever.
Where are you watching this story from? Leave the name of your city in the comments. And I wish you health, peace, and the strength to never lose yourself. Amina stood still for a few seconds after turning her back on the ceremony. The sounds behind her, musics, laughter, congratulatory voices, continued as if nothing had happened, as if her 4 years had never existed. She walked out through the iron gate, her hands still trembling slightly, yet her face was strangely calm. There are moments when the pain is so deep that you no longer react the way you normally would. An old taxi pulled over by the roadside. She opened the door, got in, and softly gave the address of her parents' house. The driver glanced at her through the rearview mirror, perhaps sensing something was wrong, but he didn't ask. In Cairo, people are used to staying silent in the face of someone else's pain. It's also a form of respect. The road grew darker as the car moved on. Yellow lights stretched endlessly, reflecting on the window like broken pieces of memory. Amina leaned her head back, closing her eyes. Not to sleep, just to avoid seeing anything more. She remembered her first days in Casablanca, a loud, unfamiliar coastal city where she knew no one. On her first day at work, she stood in the office, hearing French and Arabic intertwine, barely understanding a word. At night, she returned to her small rented room, eating dry bread, opening her phone, and waiting for a message from Omar. Just one sentence, "I miss you," was enough to make everything feel worth it. And she believed him, believed so deeply that she kept nothing for herself. "You're home?" Her mother's voice pulled her back to reality. Somehow, Amina was already standing at the front door. Her mother opened it, her eyes filled with both relief and worry. She didn't ask questions right away. She simply reached out and gently touched her daughter's face, as if to make sure she was really there. "Are you tired?" Amina shook her head, but her eyes said everything. That night, she didn't say much. Her father sat at the tea table, quietly listening to a few broken sentences. He didn't press her, didn't blame anyone. He just said one thing slowly. "Some losses are not meant for you to hold on to. They are meant to teach you how to let go." Amina sat there, her hands lightly clenched. For the first time in years, she didn't have to rush to think about money, about work, about how much she needed to send at the end of the month. But at that very moment, she realized she had nothing left, no real savings, no assets, no relationship that remained intact, only herself. The next morning, Amina woke up early, not out of habit, but because she couldn't sleep. She stood on the balcony, watching Cairo come to life. Traffic grew louder, small cafes opened, the smell of fresh bread filled the air. Life kept moving, no matter what had happened. She took out her phone. Omar's messages were still there. Promises, plans, dreams that now felt like they belonged to someone else. She didn't delete them, but she didn't read them again either. Amina opened a new note, not to write about the pasts, but to begin again. What do I still have? She typed. It took her a while before she added more. Skills, health, and self-respect. 3 things no one could take from her. And maybe, for the first time in a long while, Amina understood something she had never truly considered before, that a person's value is not measured by how much they have given, but by whether they still know how to keep themselves. She stood up and took a deep breath. There was no grand plan, no miracle waiting to happen overnight. But something had changed. This time, she would not live for someone else's dream anymore. The days that followed passed quietly, without noise, without drama, yet heavy in a very real way. Amina didn't cry again, not because the pain was gone, but because she began to understand. There are pains that don't need to be repeated to prove they exist. She stayed in Cairo for a few more days, helping her mother clean, going to the market, cooking, just like the years when life was still simple. The neighbors looked at her with curious eyes, but no one asked directly. Here, people may talk, but they also know when to keep their distance. A woman's dignity, sometimes, it is protected by the silence of those around her. One evening, her father placed a small piece of paper in front of her. It was a phone number, an old acquaintance, a business owner in Morocco. He once asked me to find someone who knows accounting. The job isn't big, but it's stable. Amina stared at the paper for a long moment. Morocco again, Morocco. The place where she had lived for 4 years, where she had given everything, and where she had lost herself. I think I should go back. She spoke softly, but with quiet certainty, not to run away, but to close what was left unfinished in her own way. 3 weeks later, Amina arrived in Marrakesh. This city was different from Casablanca. Not as loud, not as rushed. Narrow stone streets, colorful markets, the voices of vendors calling out from morning to night. Everything felt unfamiliar, yet somehow it gave her the sense that she could begin again. The new job wasn't glamorous. A small family-run transport company struggling to survive. Messy records, uncontrolled expenses, unresolved debts. The owner, an older woman named Fatima, didn't say much, but her eyes told a story of someone who had endured a lot. On her first day, Amina sat in front of a stack of files, nearly as tall as her arm. Numbers seemed to blur together. But this time she wasn't afraid. This was something she understood, something she could control. She started with the smallest things, sorting expenses, identifying losses, recording unclear transactions. No one applauded, no one praised her, but day by day, things began to make sense. In the evenings, back in her small rented room, she cooked for herself. No more dry bread, no more living just to send money to someone else. For the first time in years, she was eating for herself. One day, while reviewing old records, Amina noticed something. Large sums of money had been withdrawn with no clear explanation, not small errors. Numbers big enough to shake a small business. She brought it to Fatima. There might be a loss. Internal, Amina said directly. Fatima looked at her for a long moment. Not surprised, not angry. She simply nodded. I know. She said it simply, as if it had been accepted for a long time. Then why have you let it continue? Amina asked, her voice carrying emotion for the first time. Fatima exhaled slowly. Because I trusted someone. And sometimes the cost of trust is very high. That sentence made Amina fall silent. She understood that feeling too well. But then Fatima added, slower, firmer, but if I stop trusting people because of that, I will lose more than what I've already lost. Amina looked at her. For the first time, something shifted inside her. She used to think the safest way to avoid pain was to trust no one. But maybe that wasn't really living. In the days that followed, Amina worked harder, not to prove anything to Omar, not to take revenge on the past, but to rebuild herself piece by piece. And this time, she did something different. She kept something back. She kept part of her income. She kept time for herself. She kept boundaries. Something she had never had before. Because she had finally understood something very simple. Yet it had taken her 4 years to learn. You can love someone, help someone, sacrifice for someone, but you must never lose yourself. If you learned this lesson the hard way, comment understand so I know you're still following the story. 3 months after starting her new job in Marrakesh, Amina thought she had become calm enough not to be pulled back by the past anymore. Her days now felt clearer. Mornings at the office, afternoons reviewing accounts, evenings cooking for herself, sometimes sitting on her small balcony, watching the city fade into golden lights. Life wasn't perfect, but at least it belonged to her. Until one afternoon, her phone rang, an unknown number, country code, Egypt. Amina stared at the screen for a few seconds. She hadn't received any calls from Cairo in weeks. Not from Omar, not from Layla, not from anyone connected to that chapter of her life. She answered, Amina, is that you? That voice. She recognized it instantly. Omar, no longer warm, no longer confident. There was something else now. Rushed, even anxious. I need to talk to you. Amina didn't respond right away. She stepped out onto the balcony, closing the door behind her, as if to separate herself from the only safe space she had. I don't think we have anything left to say, she replied calmly. No, we do. There's a lot, Omar said quickly. Everything isn't what you think. She almost laughed, but she didn't. Then talk. A brief silence. Then he said, I'm having problems with the company. Amina closed her eyes for a second, not surprised. Go on. Some investments didn't work out. And Layla's family, they pulled their funds. Everything is frozen. Now, I just need a little time to fix things. You called me to tell me that. Her voice remained steady, but there was a sharp edge to it. No, I called because you understand these numbers. You know how to fix this. You've helped me before. If you could just take a look at the accounts. Amina cut him off. You hired an accountant, Omar, but no one understands it like you do, he said, almost pleading. Amina, please, just once. I'll pay you. I promise. The word pay made her fall silent, not because she was moved, but because she realized he truly didn't understand. He didn't understand what had happened, didn't understand what he had taken from her, couldn't be measured in money. Whose name is on the company? She asked. Omar hesitated for a moment. Mine? And the investments? Mine? Then, the problem is yours. Silence on the other end. Then his voice softened. Amina, I know I was wrong, but you can't deny everything I have today has a part of you in it. That sentence made her chest tighten slightly. Not from pain, but because it was true. But then she remembered something. 4 years, no documents, no name, no rights, only trust. You're right, she replied slowly. A part of me was there then, but that part, you chose to throw away. The silence on the other side felt frozen. Amina didn't speak immediately. She let the silence do its work. You didn't call to apologize, she said after a few seconds. You called because you need help. Omar didn't deny it. I'm losing control, and you are the only one. No, Amina interrupted, gently but firmly. I'm not your person anymore. A simple sentence, but one she had never been strong enough to say before. You don't need me to fix your mistakes. You need to learn how to take responsibility for what you chose. She heard him sigh. Tired, perhaps for the first time, truly facing the consequences. So, you won't help me? Amina looked out into the distance. The rooftops of Marrakesh stretched under the fading light. She didn't feel anger. Didn't feel hatred. Only clarity. I won't do that anymore, she said. Not, I won't help you, but I won't do that anymore. Not continuing the same cycle, not returning to the same role, not sacrificing herself. One more time, she ended the call, without hesitation, without regret. Just a quiet feeling, like setting down something that had been too heavy for far too long. Amina walked back inside, sat at her desk, opened the file she had been working on. Her life continued, and this time, no one else had the right to write it for her. If you've ever had to say no to protect yourself, comment strong enough so I know you are still here. In the days after that call, Amina never mentioned Ofmar's name again. Not because she was trying to forget, but because she no longer needed to remember. There are relationships that, once they pass a certain point, are no longer pain. They simply become a lesson. Work in Marrakesh began to enter a more difficult phase. The numbers were clear. The problems had surfaced, but fixing them, that was the real challenge. One morning, Amina was called into Fatima's office. On the table was a thick file. Fatima pushed it toward her. Take a look at this. Amina opened it. Old contracts, unclear payments. Some signatures didn't match. She flipped through the pages, slower and slower. Someone in the company has been taking money, she said, her voice firm but low. Nephew. My nephew. The room grew heavy. Amina looked up, not surprised, but understanding, family, trust, and the cost of it. What are you going to do? Amina asked. Fatima didn't answer right away. She stood up, walked to the window, and looked down at the street below. People passed by, cars moved on. Life continued as if nothing had happened. I gave him chances, she said slowly. More than once. Amina stayed silent. But if I keep ignoring it, I won't just lose money. I'll lose respect. That sentence made Amina think of herself. The times she had overlooked things. The times she had convinced herself that just a little more, everything would be okay. But the truth is, there are things that, if you don't stop them in time, will take more than you ever imagined. We'll handle this by the process, Amina said. Transparent, clear, no emotions. Fatima turned to look at her. There was something in her eyes, like afraid. Amina shook her head slightly. I used to be, but now I understand. Fear doesn't help you keep anything. That afternoon, the internal meeting took place. The nephew sat across from them, young, confident, but his eyes began to waver as the numbers were presented. Do you have anything to say? Fatima asked. He stayed silent for a few seconds, then spoke quickly. It's just temporary. I was going to pay it back. The company is still fine. Amisa looked straight at him. No, the company is not fine. And this isn't temporary. This is a choice. The room fell silent. He turned to Fatima. Aunt, I'm family. Fatima closed her eyes for a second, then opened them. Yes, and because of that, I waited for you to stop. But you didn't. There was no shouting, no tears, only a decision. The contract was terminated. Legal procedures were initiated. When he left the room, no one said another word. Amina remained seated, looking at the file in front of her. She didn't feel victorious, nor did she feel immediate relief. There was only one feeling: clarity. That sometimes the right thing to do is also the hardest thing to do. That evening, as they sat having tea, Fatima said something Amina would remember for a long time. You know, respect is not something others give you. It's something you must protect yourself. And when you protect it long enough, others will have no choice but to respect you. Amin didn't respond right away. She thought about the past, about the times she tried to hold on to a relationship by losing herself. When she believed that loving more would make someone value her more. But the truth was the opposite. The more you lose your boundaries, the less others see your value. That night, Amina returned to her room later than usual. She opened her notebook and added a new line. Keeping boundaries is also a form of self-respect. She put the pen down and looked out the window. The city was still noisy. Life went on. But inside her, something had changed. Not that she had become colder, but she had begun to understand. Kindness does not mean accepting everything, and respect always begins with yourself. After that meeting, nothing in the company changed overnight. There was no miracle that followed a right decision. Only a slow process, but a steady one. Amina began working deeper into the financial system, not just fixing mistakes, but rebuilding it from the ground up. She set up spending control procedures, clearly separated personal and company accounts, and required every payment to have proper documentation. Things that seemed simple, yet were often ignored by small businesses. In the beginning, not everyone was comfortable. Some long-time employees whispered among themselves. Some said she was too strict. Others thought she didn't understand how things worked here. Amina heard them, but she didn't react. She didn't come to be liked. She came to do what was right. One morning, an older driver approached her. He placed a stack of papers on her desk, his tone slightly irritated. We've always done it this way. No one asks this many questions like you do. Amina looked at him without avoiding his gaze. And all this time, the company has been losing money this way, she replied calmly. The man fell silent, not because he was immediately convinced, but because he realized she wasn't speaking to argue. She was speaking to change something. Weeks passed and the numbers began to respond. Costs decreased. Cash flow became clearer. The losses stopped appearing. Fatima didn't say much, but she started giving Amina more authority, not just as an accountant, but as someone involved in decisions. One afternoon, she called Amina into her office. I want to reopen the transport route to the Algeria border, she said. We used to run it, but had to stop because of losses. Amina sat down, opened her laptop. We need to calculate everything again. Fuel costs, taxes, transport risks, and partners on the other side. Fatima nodded. You handle it. It was no longer just a task. It was trust. In the days that followed, Amina worked almost without rest. She studied the market, called former partners, checked every number carefully. Not to prove anything, but because this time she was building something that had her name in it, no longer Samusana Solsta's dream. After 2 months, the transport route was relaunched, small, cautious, but controlled. The first truck left early one morning. Amina stood beside Fatima, watching it disappear into the dusty road. Jude, no one spoke, but both of them understood. This was a turning point. 3 months later, the results were clear. The new route was profitable. Customers returned. The company began to stabilize. One evening, Fatima asked Amina to stay after work. She placed a set of documents in front of her. Read it. Amina opened it. A contract. Shares. She looked up, slightly surprised. You want me to? No, Fatima interrupted gently. I'm not giving it to you. You earned it. That sentence made Amina fall silent, not because of the percentage written in the contract, but because for the first time in a long time, she felt that what she had done was seen in the right way, not used, not taken for granted, not forgotten, simply recognized. I'm getting old, Fatima said slowly. I need someone to continue this, but not just anyone. I need someone who understands the value of respect, Amina signed, without hesitation, not because of the money, but because she knew this time she was stepping into something she truly deserved. At the same time, in Cairo, everything was moving in the opposite direction. Omar was losing partners. Poorly managed investments began to collapse. Rumors spread faster than any report could keep up with. Layla left quietly without explanation, leaving behind a void he couldn't fill. One evening, he sat alone in his office, staring at numbers he no longer understood. For the first time, he realized it wasn't that Amina didn't need him. It was that he never understood how much he needed her. But some realizations come too late. In Marrakesh, Amina closed her laptop. A long day had ended. She stepped outside, taking a deep breath. The air felt cooler. The city lights came on. She didn't think about Omar. Didn't think about the past, only about tomorrow. And for the first time, tomorrow didn't feel frightening anymore. 1 year later, Amina returned to Cairo. She was no longer the girl who had walked away in silence from that ceremony. No longer the woman carrying unanswered questions. This time, she came back with a clear purpose to open a new branch for the company in the very city where everything had once begun. Cairo airport was just as crowded as ever. The familiar air, noisy, a little dusty, touched with sunlight. But Amina felt different. She no longer felt small in this place. The new office was on a street that wasn't too central. Not luxurious, but neat and professional. In the first few days, Amina personally checked every detail. The lease contract, staffing, operating permits. She didn't want anything overlooked. Not because she feared failure, but because she understood the cost of carelessness. News about the new company spread quickly, and just as quickly, an old name returned, Omar. He stood at the office door one afternoon when most of the staff had already left. His eyes no longer carried the confidence they once did. His clothes were still neat, but the presence of a man in control was gone. Amina looked at him for a few seconds, not surprised, not irritated, just calm. Are you busy? He asked. You can speak quickly, she replied. He stepped inside, standing for a moment as if unsure where to begin. Then finally, he said it directly. I need a chance. Amina didn't ask what he meant. She already knew where this was going. My company is almost shut down. I tried to fix things, but no one trusts me anymore. He paused, looking at her. I know you're opening a branch here. I want to work with you. Not help me, not give me money. This time, it was work. A small change in wording, but enough for Amina to realize. He had understood something. She pulled out a chair and sat down, gesturing for him to sit across from her. What experience do you have that my company needs? She asked. The question carried no emotion, no personal undertone. Just business. Omar hesitated slightly. Perhaps he hadn't expected the conversation to begin this way. I managed operations before. I understand the market here. I have connections. Do those connections still trust use? Amina asked directly. He fell silent. The answer was already clear. A few seconds of silence passed. Then Amina spoke slowly. I don't hate you, Omar. He looked up, but I'm not the same person anymore. She held his gaze. No avoidance, no softness. Before I helped you because I thought it was love. But now I understand. Helping someone doesn't mean sacrificing yourself. Omar nodded slightly. No argument. No defense. Maybe for the first time, he was truly listening. I can't give you a management position, Amina continued. Not because of the past, but because of the present. You haven't proven that you're ready for that responsibility. She paused briefly. But if you truly want to start again, from the beginning, I can give you a chance. Omar looked at her, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. What position? Operations staff. 3-month probation. Basic salary. No privileges. The room fell silent. It wasn't an easy offer to accept for someone who once stood at the top, but it wasn't a rejection either. Omar lowered his head, thinking. After a moment, he said, I understand. No pride, no defensiveness, just acceptance. I'll do it. Amina nodded. No smile, no emotion, just a decision. When Omar left, she sat alone in the office. There was no sense of victory, no sense of revenge, only a quiet, gentle peace. She didn't save him, she didn't destroy him either. She simply set a boundary and kept it. And perhaps that was the hardest thing of all. That evening, Amina turned off the office lights and stepped outside. Cairo was still bright, still busy, still alive in its own way. She took a deep breath. The past was still there, but it no longer controlled her. This time, she was the one deciding her story. Tells Frey if you believe forgiveness is not about going back, but moving forward. Comment. Move on so you're still here. There are endings that aren't loud. Not someone kneeling to apologize. Not tears that come too late. Not the return of a love that was lost. But peace. 3 months after Omar started working at the company, no one talked about the past anymore. He came early, left late, working quietly like any other employee. No one treated him differently. No one looked down on him. He was simply a man learning how to begin again. Amina observed everything, but didn't interfere. She didn't control him, didn't monitor, didn't try to prove anything. Because she understood everyone must take responsibility for their own life. And a second chance only matters when someone truly wants to change. The company in Cairo gradually stabilized. The new transport route performed well. The team grew stronger together. The numbers were no longer pressure, but proof of a process built the right way. One afternoon, Fatima called her on video. I hear the Cairo branch is doing very well. Amina smiled softly. We are moving in the right direction. Fatima looked at her for a moment, then said, You're not just rebuilding the company, you're rebuilding yourself. Amina didn't respond immediately. She looked out the window. Cairo at sunset. The sunlight touching old rooftops. People still moving quickly, life continuing as it always does. I think I'm just learning how to live the right way, she said. A week later, the company held a small gathering. Not big celebration. Just a simple dinner among people who had gone through the hardest phase together. Omar was there too. He sat in a corner, quiet. But when Amina walked in, he stood up, not out of politeness, but out of respect. A small gesture, but enough. At the end of the evening, when almost everyone had left, Omar walked over to her. Thank you, he said. Not long, no explanation, just a sentence, but completely different from the man he used to be. Amina looked at him. She didn't say the man who had once hurt her. She saw someone who had faced the consequences of his choices and was trying to change. You don't need to thank me, she said gently. You just need to live better. He nodded. And this time, nothing was left unfinished. No promises, no regrets, no going back. Just an ending where it belonged. That night, Amina returned home late. She stood in front of the mirror for a long moment, not to check her appearance, but to look at herself. The woman in the mirror was no longer the girl who once waited for a promise. No longer someone willing to give up everything just to be loved. She was still gentle, still caring, still had a warm heart. But now she had something more, boundaries. And that is what defined her value. Life is not fair. Some people give so much and receive very little. But Amina's story reminds us of something very real. You cannot control how others treat you. But you always have the right to decide whether to continue or to walk away. And sometimes walking away at the right time is how you save your own life. Amina turned off the lights outside. Cairo was still bright, but inside her was a peace she had never known before. Not because everything became perfect, but because she had become someone she could finally respect. There are women who don't become strong on the day they succeed. They become strong on the day they realize they deserve respect, even when no one is standing beside them. Amina didn't lose everything in a single moment. She lost it little by little. Her trust, her expectations, and even the old version of herself. But it was in those very days that she learned something no one can teach unless they've been through pain. That day. Kindness is not weakness, and sacrifice does not mean losing yourself. Before, she believed love meant giving without conditions, trying harder, enduring more, staying silent longer. But life is real and brutally honest. It does not reward blind sacrifice. It only opens doors for those who know when to stop and choose themselves again. Amina didn't win because she became richer, nor because the one who hurt her paid the price. She won the moment she no longer needed someone else to change in order to feel worthy. She didn't seek revenge. She didn't go back. She didn't close her heart. She simply moved forward with a version of herself that understood more, knew what she needed, and most importantly, knew what she deserved. And maybe that is what many women need to hear today. You don't have to become cold to be strong. You don't have to lose faith to grow. You just need to learn how not to lose yourself, no matter who walks away. Because in the end, What keeps you standing is not someone else's love, but how you choose to treat yourself. If you've ever gone through something difficult to understand your worth, comment, I am worthy.